So good evening, everybody, and welcome to this, I think it's third session now. Tonight we're going to discuss the Katha Upanishad, Conversation with Death. So without too much ado, let me share the presentation and we can begin. One second. Okay, so there's the presentation. Let me move that out. So Katha Upanishad, A Conversation with Death. So this is based on the teachings of this Upanishad called the Katha Upanishad. So, but first, I think before we discuss the Katha Upanishad, we first need to understand what's an Upanishad. And in order to understand that, we need to understand what the Vedas is. And so, just to give you some context, so the Vedas are basically four sets of books. They were compiled based on all the various texts and verbal teachings that were there. And they were sort of arranged by an individual named Vedavyas. Okay, and he was a sage, and he sort of arranged the Vedas in a sort of in a way. And how he did it was, and I'll show you the logic. He sort of broke the Vedas up into many sections. Okay, and so within each of the four Vedas, the Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva, there's a beginning section where you got these mantras and hymns and whatever. Then you've got Brahmanas, which are about explaining how you run ceremonies. Oh, and then Aranyakas are how-to guides on rituals and sacrifices and things like that. And all these is none of my interest. There's only one area that's sort of the biggest interest for me, and that's called the Upanishads. So it's the last part within the various Vedas. And in there, there's short philosophical discussions. And this is where, for me, it's the phenomenal stuff. And so how you need to understand the Vedas is it's almost like a black forest cake. The way it's set up is these four layers. And one of these layers, the one that you like the most, would be then the Upanishad. And so you must have heard the term Vedanta. And the term Vedanta, if you have not, what it means is there's two parts to it. There's Ved, which refers to Vedas, and Anta, which means the end. So Vedas is essentially all the teachings of the Upanishads. So it's all the philosophical and spiritual knowledge. And so I've written there that the Vedanta is the analysis of existential awareness. Okay. They ask very way out deep questions, like, for example, what is that by whom the mind is directed to think? So it's almost who is the thinker of the thoughts? Who is the seer of the eyes? Who is the hearer of the sound? They want to know what's behind that which is doing all this. So it's a source of the source almost. And we even have a quote from Snoop Dogg where he says, "I smoke the Upanishads. It's the good shit." It's an unconfirmed quote. I can't, but it really is a phenomenal knowledge. Okay, and that's more or less what the Upanishads is. So now context to the Katha Upanishad. So the Katha Upanishad, there are about 108 Upanishads, and there are about 10 principal Upanishads. And the Katha is one of these 10 principal Upanishads. So it's one of the, I would say, the main Upanishads you'd need to probably understand because it's one of the foundational texts about Vedanta. And the story is about a young boy named Nachiketas. And he's about 11 or 12 years old. And his father was a great sage, and he was doing what's called a yajna. It's a sacrifice, a ceremony of sacrifice. And in that ceremony of sacrifice, he was giving away all these cows to the priests and so forth. But these cows were all spent cows. They had no milk to give, and they were old and were going to die. They were almost a liability. So Nachiketas saw this and he questioned his dad. He says, "Dad, in a yajna, you're supposed to give away the most important things, not the least important things." So he asked his dad, "You know what? I'm your most important thing. Who are you going to give me away to in this sacrifice?" And this really pissed off his father. It got him really irritated. And the father said in a haste of anger, you know what, I'm going to send you to death. And suddenly Nachiketas finds himself at the door of Lord Yama, Lord of Death. But at this point, Lord Yama was out gathering some other souls, I guess, but he was away for 3 days. And so Nachiketas had to sit outside Yama's abode, waiting for him, whilst with no food, no water, just waiting. So when eventually, when the Lord of Death Yama returned, he was apologetic, and he gave Nachiketas 3 gifts, 3 boons, 3 wishes. And so this story is really about the third wish, because in the first 2 boons or wishes, Nachiketas really lowballed it, asked for some simple stuff. But in his third wish is where he really ups the ante, okay? And so in Nachiketas' third wish, he wants to know what happens after death. He wants to, so he says, where do the soul and the self go to? Let me minimize this. Where do the soul and the self go to after the body dies? Some say they live on, others say they do not. Please tell me the truth, O Yama. So this was Nachiketas' third wish. And this is a very heavy question. I mean, if you've got all the wishes in the universe, you want to know what happens after death. And so it's quite a deep question. So Yama, the Lord of Death, his plan was a bit different. So what he decided to do was to bribe. So it was more a test as such. He wanted to know whether Nachiketas was earnest in his seek for this knowledge, or whether he could be bribed out of it. So Yama offered him elephants and horses and thousands and hundreds of thousands of women and helpers, and the ability to live for 1,000 years, and wealth beyond his dreams, and that his family and his children and his children's children and their children would all live wonderful lives for 1,000 years. And it was a phenomenal offer. But Nachiketas declined it all, and he says, you know what? These indulgences dulls the vitality of my senses. I want to know the truth, because even after 1,000 years, I'm going to see you at my deathbed, Lord Yama. So I want to know what's the secret to escape you. And so this is when Yama steps into, when he realizes that Nachiketas is really earnest about his what he's seeking. He then switches gear and he becomes a more teacher. Okay, and remember, Yama is simply just a role, another role of the Supreme. It's simply just another version of you, if you want to call it that. But so in this, Yama starts to discuss a few points, and very few subtle points. And the first one he discusses, he says, you know what? There are 2 parts. There's the part of the good and the part of the pleasant. And initially, one might think, those are the same, the good and the pleasant. If you listen to a Bob Marley song, Africa Unites, I think he says, how good and pleasant it would be. But no, there's a big difference between the two. Sort of the way Yama explains it is the wise choose the good over the pleasant. The pleasant is essentially self-fulfilling, whereas the good is almost, I would say, like a law of one, where you make a decision that's not based on your own selfish purposes, but the decision that's the good for the all. And so in that as well, Yama says, that the wise, they prioritize spiritual growth, and that when you seek pleasure, it's very short-lived, and eventually it actually leads to suffering. It's almost like a marginal return. You eat one chocolate bar, you get a certain amount of happiness. You eat the second one, it's not as good, but it's a little less. After the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, the eighth, the ninth, the pleasure that you seek actually becomes detrimental to you. So it firstly doesn't give you the joy it initially did, and eventually it actually leads to your own suffering and so forth. So here he talks about material pleasures causing attachment, And so what he says is, you have to seek the eternal truth and go beyond the pleasure, go beyond the temporary and the unfulfilling. What you need to look for is the truth. So seek the eternal wisdom and seek that liberation that frees you from this endless cycle of birth and death and reincarnation. So Yama also spends some time explaining the nature of the self. This is your innermost truth, and he explains it that the self is eternal. It remains unchanging even after death, and that it's transcendent beyond all dualities, beyond pain, beyond pleasure, beyond everything. Um, it's also separate and distinct from your body and mind. So we understand, I guess, the body and mind very well, but there's another element, a more spirit element that's part of this thing, which is a new distinct capability of yours. And also he talks about this Atman, yourself. This is the big capital letter S. I should have used a big S there, which is essentially the same as the supreme ultimate reality, which they call the Brahman, the vast. Okay. So also Lord Yama also talks about, in order to realize the self, you have to have direct experience. And that means awakening to that ultimate reality, which is you. It's about transcendence. So moving beyond what you're seeing in this world, there's a reality beyond that which you need to experience, and then you know what your real self is. And this external reality is simply just a very, very uh, small little sensory part. So if you have to look at, for example, scientifically, the full spectrum of the electromagnetic system, white light, or the light that we see, makes up about 1% of that full electromagnetic spectrum. And that's the part that we see in the universe, which means 99% of the universe we actually do not see. And so, from one perspective, we are technically blind in this universe. And so, in the way that Yama describes it, its true understanding comes through direct experience. Okay. I think here we've discussed the nature of the self. Hold on, yeah. Sorry, wrong direction. So it's also this journey towards yourself. There's a path, and he explains the path towards that, which requires discipline. It requires you to cultivate this practice. It's a daily practice. It's a regular routine. So as you have a discipline of watching Netflix every day, you should have a discipline of cultivating that self. And how it's achieved is through just simple meditation, simple sitting in stillness. And in that stillness, the self reveals itself. And of course, we've discussed this on Sunday, which is the interconnectedness of everything. So with these Upanishads, it's sort of, they're describing this one reality, but you have to imagine this one reality as a sparkling diamond. And from many dimensions, you can describe the same reality. So you can consider the Upanishads as 108 ways of describing the same jewel. Okay? And Katha is simply just one dimension of this. So the other part is that the role of the mind. And the mind can actually be your friend or your foe. And if it's uncontrolled and untrained, like a wild set of horses, it will run in a direction of its own. And if you're unable to control it, you're simply just dealing with some wild horses in the head. And so you have to almost cultivate a set of discipline to train the mind, to train it to remain in one spot, to train it to focus on one element. And through that you cultivate this transcendence beyond reality. I think we've covered all this more. So I just want to take you through 3 more slides. So Yama also talks about the path to freedom, which is you have to detach yourself from material attachments. So it's not that you need to live as a sort of how can I say, a life of a pauper. No, You can have the most fulfilling and opulent life you want. Just don't be attached to the material stuff. So understand you can use it, you can enjoy it, but just don't think you own it. And so here there's a bit of mental purification that needs to happen as well. And then there's this dissolution of your ego. This is one of the big things that needs to happen. So if ever you see this Nataraja, I don't know if you've ever seen it, the dancing Shiva. This is very much a symbol of dissolution of ego. So that little character that Shiva is standing on there, that little shitty fellow, that's your ego. And this is sort of your true, eternal, all transcendental self, which emerges out of that limited being who you think you are. So that little limited being is the one you see in the mirror. And this Shiva emerging from it is the true reality of what you are. And of course, always there's only one. There's only one. The universe does not reconcile into two or three or multiple. It reconciles into the oneness. And so it's very, very important to understand that whilst we believe this world around us is real, and it feels real and it senses as real, and everything tells you it's real, because of the fact that it's changing. It's always changing. It's never stationary. This was the sage's logic, that this is not reality. Ultimate reality would be unchanging, would be the essence of everything. And so this is what they strive towards. They understood that this universe, very much like the teachings, or like not teachings, like very much like the example in the Matrix, was simply an illusion, and that there was a truth behind it, which was the real, true reality. And I think two more slides from my side. So the next one is about the sacred syllable Om. So Yama also gives a small um, explanation on Om, and that this is the bridge to the ultimate. So he says you use Om like a bridge. It takes you from the material and transcends you into the supernatural. And if you chant Om, you'll understand that it's like an energetic arrow, that you'll feel that it has an upward trajectory that goes up that way. But in a way, it's also going inwards. So it's an almost, for me, I called it's upwards in the way you would experience it. But in its reality, it's an inward sound that goes into your deepest of selves. And of course, it's the tool that's most effective to give you direct experience. And then on the second side, I've got the all is Om. And this is the other one, where how it's described in the Mandukya Upanishad is that Om is the imperishable, that all this, everything around you, every single thing is its manifestation, that past, present, and future, everything is Om, and that whatever transcends the three divisions of time, that too is Om. So essentially, everything is Om. And this includes Jeffrey Epstein, Adolf Hitler, every single bad character, every single good character. All is Om. Okay, it is simply a manifestation of the supreme energy around. At this point, Om does not choose sides. It is it's everything is its manifestation. Okay. And so one very, very important point, and that's what I'm at the bottom there, is that Om is not just a sound. How it's described, it's a tool. It's one of the most powerful weapons you have in your path to spiritual transformation. And this is my last slide, I think, before we end. And the last thing, that one of the other things that, or the analogies that Lord Yama uses, is this analogy of a chariot with horses and reins, and a charioteer and the rider itself, whoever's being carried, the passenger, I guess, is the best name. And how they describe it, he says, the horses are your senses. They would chase sense objects. The reins of the horse is your mind. So if your mind is unable to control the senses, the horses will run wild. The charioteer, the person that's controlling everything, that's your intellect. And he's the one you need to use. Your discriminating intelligence is who you need to get on your side, because the intellect can be used to control the mind, which then can be used to control the senses. And in this analogy, your body is the entire chariot, and the passenger or the rider there, the guy in the back, that is yourself, the big letter self, big letter S. Okay. And so this analogy of controlling the mind and controlling the reins of controlling the horses is supremely important in this journey. So having said that, that's the end of the Katha Upanishad and sort of the lowdown from death. So I'd like to say thank you, and that we are you, and these are all beings are you. And of course, that you are that. Thank you very much. So I'm going to stop sharing now. Let's open up for a small discussion. I hope you enjoyed it. Ash, nice to see you. Michelle as well. Nice to see you. Hi, hi. So any questions, firstly? Comments? Anything?
Maybe a quick question was, sorry, Raul, I joined slightly late, so I didn't get the last bit where you kind of linked it to death. Maybe explain that a bit more.
Which part linked to death, please?
You mentioned something right at the end about death. I didn't follow that, or maybe I got it wrong.
Oh, I said you are that. Not death,
That,
that.
right. And then maybe just something that you've told me about is sort of the education around like Om being misconceived, or a misconception that Om is related to Hinduism.
Yeah, well, for me, it's a universal sound. I would assume, like, there's like sort of a few mathematical things that even if aliens had to, when they arrived, the sign of intelligence would be if you had discovered that. So they talk about, for example, something called the E8 lattice, the most beautiful mathematical structure in the universe. If you had to show this structure to an alien species, they would understand your level of progress technologically. And so similarly, I think Om for me is that knowing Om is a universal knowledge. And it's not from this planet. For me, it's a universal thing. These even the Aborigines, I mean, with their didgeridoo, that sound is the sound of Om. It's the vibration of Om. That so no, it's not for one sect or one culture or one belief, and not even one planet for that matter.
I think it's important that you understand the vibration that comes from Om. I mean, we're talking about the universe, and I think vibrations from sound, from the earth, from the universe itself is very important. And Om, I think, is one of uh, uh, the phrases that vibrates the most. I don't know what y'all think about that.
Yeah. Oh, 100%, Asha. You got it. You bang on. So I'm actually doing a study on Om. So I've put together some big analyses about how phenomenal it is. So firstly, from health benefits, it affects all five of your. So in Vedic knowledge, there's five bodies you have, panchakoshas. You've got a physical body, a pranic body, an energetic layer body. You've got a mind body. You've got an intellect body, and you've got a causal body. And simply by chanting Om, you have hundreds of benefits for each of those. It is also the sound that it's called a bija mantra, a seed mantra, which means that every sound, every syllable, every vibration is already contained within it. So you want a master key, Om is that master key, without a doubt. It's well, that's how it's described and explained. Also, one other thing is Om is one of I think the only words where I remember this from my aunt telling me this when I was quite young. It's the only sound where you can expel all the air from your lungs. And maybe one other fact, maybe a question to you, Ash. How many parts does Om have? Do you know how many parts does Om have?
Parts. No, I
So
don't.
when
I'm
you
not going
spell
to even
it, when
guess.
you spell it, there's an A element, a U element, and an M element. So this is the first three parts of Om, the A, U, and M. And how they describe it is A creates the material world, the U creates the dream world in your head, the M is your deep sleep world. But that's not there's a fourth element of Om, and that is the silence of Om. And how they describe it is it's not a silence where it's the absence of noise, but it's the silence that underpins even the loudest of explosions. And that is so what they're saying is that is what you are. You're the silence of Om, observing all the other noises of Om.
Okay.
Michelle, anything from you?
Om. Thank you very much, Raoul.
No pleasure.
Yeah, I find this topic of death very, very interesting. I think we experience many deaths throughout a life cycle.
We have already experienced many deaths.
Yeah.
In fact, you would have had exactly an infinity of deaths
Already. Yeah. And it's death is also it's part of the mystery of life as well. As you mentioned, no, we don't know exactly what happens after death.
Well, up until now you don't, because now you've heard directly from the man called Death himself. He explains you that essentially what he's saying is, I'm simply a role. I'm an illusion. I have to play my role as Death. But if you understand the reality, I too as Death vanish because I don't exist. It's simply an illusion. Because you are immortal. When you find your immortality, then the illusion of death vanishes.
Yeah, I think that's what you're saying right now. That's really the key. Also for spiritual growth is really finding that immortal space within.
Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, I will dig a bit deeper into that. Yeah. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions? Anybody? Any comments?
No, I just want to make a comment. My dad passed away 2 years ago, and as Hindus, we had to do specific rituals over the 13 days in order to see his soul through. Well, it's actually over a year. Interesting thing, I cut the last 15 minutes, Raul. Sorry, I was late. And when the last slide you put up, depicting the horse, the chariot, and the Atma, it was exactly what was said to me, slightly different, but there's always an animal to carry the Atma through the universe.
Yeah.
Needs guidance. When death is upon us, our soul is totally immature again. It's like a newborn, don't know much. And then it needs guidance through its journey to its next life or to its next form. And I think the important thing is being part of the universe and all connected. We all probably, whoever's concerned uses that energy to guide that soul, whether it's a beloved one, a family or friend. I think all that is important. So I think that's an important part of death, that we all realize we're connected and we use our energy correctly.
Yeah. So I'm going to divert this to a shamanic view, Ashwant. I'm going to ask Michelle and possibly Shireen, if you want, to share some insights from a shamanic view about these spirit animals.
Shireen, shall I? May I? Yeah. So in many indigenous cultures and shamanic cultures, they are, especially when they work with all kinds of spirit animals, but there are 4 particular animals that they work with. It's the snake, that connects us to Mother Earth. So it's grounding us. It's showing us how to shed our skin and die many times over one lifetime and grow always into something new, a new personality, new skills, new relationships. Then there is the jaguar, that shows us to be very precise and to have a plan and to use our intellectual capacity also to navigate through life. The jaguar is also representing the sacred order, or chaos, is the gatekeeper of chaos and order, because both exists in this universe, and out of chaos there is order again. And then there's the sweet, lovely hummingbird, connecting us with an infinite source of sweetness and self-love and compassion and trust into the unknown, trust into the soul's path, and walking without fear the path of life, unknowing what will happen next, but trusting into the unfolding of life, anchored in self-love and compassion. And there's the eagle, and the eagle connects us with our ancestors and the stars, and takes us above all everyday problems and issues. And when we ask the eagle or the condor in South America, they both represent the same energy. They can lift our spirit up, and can help us see things from a higher perspective. And yeah, as you mentioned before, they can also help carry the soul up back to the stars. They can carry, they can really, lift up the spirit of humans here on Earth, but they can also help navigate the soul back to their origin, to the field of souls, the ocean, the vast ocean of souls. Yeah. So from a shamanic point of view, because we are everything, we have this ability, and we don't need to be a shamanic practitioner. Everybody can do it. Everybody can connect with archetypes and spirit animals, and it's really the beauty of it. And we can invite these archetypes and spirit animals in our lives, and they have a great skill set to teach us. Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. Shireen, anything else you want to add about the own spirit animals? I mean, just like, everyone has their own spirit animal. And
So, well,
what's their
Michelle
purpose?
very well, but it's also in shamanism, because we believe everything is energy. Even the clothes you're wearing is an energy. That everything is energy. Absolutely everything you can see is has an energy. There's also the belief that each person or each living being has an animal, a spirit animal that guides you, like a guardian angel. If you believe in that, or saints, or whatever, a higher being. The animals play a big role in our lives here as in this dimension, and they guide us and they protect us, and we can connect with their energy. And each one of us has our own animal spirit. It's not like you and I can kind of share an animal. While you may share the same type of animal, it will have a different meaning or message or energy for you. So, we both can have the cheetah as an animal spirit guide, but what it brings to you might be different for what it brings to me. So, what you had said, Ashwant, about the animal guiding the soul, in shamanism, it is quite it's quite a belief. It's part of what shamanism is about. So yeah.
Thank you for that. I hope that answers your question a bit, Ash, or supports your comment rather.
Yeah.
Good. Anything else for tonight? If not, then I want to wish you all sweet dreams and have a wonderful evening. I hope to have another session tomorrow. Let me see if I have a topic by then, but I'll let you know tomorrow whether we have another topic or discussion. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raoul.
Have a good evening. Bye bye.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Good night.
Bye-bye.